Greetings, Deep Dive Podcast listeners. This is your boy, Sam Orum, coming at you with another episode of the Deep Dive Podcast. Guys, I am so excited once again to have an opportunity to just kind of share some things with you, a message of empowerment, entertainment. We've been having a great time over the past few weeks. Hopefully all of you are able to tune in last week with our special guest, J. Marcus Johnson, who did an incredible job. Our numbers were on a record level last week. And I only share that with you because I want you to understand the power of where we are and how the podcast is growing around the globe. We are so excited about that. And I want to welcome all of you who are new to the Deep Dive Podcast. You know, welcome. Without you, there would be no podcast. And then obviously for those of you who have been supporting the podcast for all 3 seasons, you know, thank you so very much. Once again, the podcast would not exist if it were not for you. So we're just happy. We're just excited. I'm delighted to be able to just share some things with you. As I mentioned to you before, we have more interviews coming up very soon. But I really wanted to kind of jump into a topic tonight that so many people have been talking about. And I just want to get people out of this rut. You know, guys, I think that I don't know what's going on with humanity. I've mentioned this before, but I think there's a lot of scarcity in humanity now. People, you know, are so tribal and people are just so unforgiving and people are just relentless in terms of just trying to be selfish and do certain things that, you know, may not benefit them, certainly won't benefit you. It's just kind of crazy. I don't know. I can't put my hands on it, but I think in order for us to thrive moving forward, closing out 2023, going into 2024 and beyond, I think in order for us to really thrive at a high level, we're going to have to make a change. And that's what this episode is about tonight. It's just time to make a change. I talked about this with my company and some of the leadership, and, you know, there are so many things that are going on. Some things you can see, some things you cannot see, you know, things that are technologically driven, things that are mindset driven. There are so many things that's going on that if you're not in the know, so to speak, then you're going to be subjected to whatever those changes are unwillingly. What I want people to understand is in order for you to become whole, in order for you to circumvent all of these changes, whether it's changes again in technology, whether it's changes in mindset, tribalism, politics, whatever it may be, there is something that's going on. But we still have to live, which means we still have to thrive. I mentioned to you a couple of episodes ago, I was going to share more and more from my teachings or studies, I should say, with one of my mentors who since passed on, Dr. Miles Monroe. And it's important for us to understand some of the things that he talked about because he had foresight as it relates to what's going on right now, what's going on today. He had foresight in terms of what may be happening. And as it turns out, he's 100% correct. We've talked to you, or I've talked to you about, you know, understanding, identifying your purpose and all of these things over the past couple of seasons. I've done it relentlessly simply because if there is no purpose, there is no quality of life. And so many people are living lifelessly right now that you have to make a change. You have to be able to do certain things in order to grow. You have to be able to do certain things in order to you know, just live that quality of life that we all seek, but so many people lack. I think one of the biggest reasons, and I've said this over and over again, but one of the biggest reasons that people lack a quality of life is a quality of mindset. You know, we get stuck in this rut. We get stuck in doing something a certain way over and over again. And when it's time to make that change that we're talking about, then, you know, we're in this rut or stuck in a pattern of life where it does not allow us to come out of that cage. That's that elephant mentality where you can take a baby elephant and put a chain on his leg and just have him walk around in a circle. And by the time you take that chain off, when he's even more of an adult or big elephant, if you will, he still walks in that same circle because his mindset has been conditioned to that particular circle. That's what has happened to a lot of us. That's what has happened to a lot of people that you deal with on a daily basis. It may even be some of you who feel like you're stuck in a rut. It's because you have developed that elephant mentality by doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. That's not going to happen. So how do you start to change that mindset? Again, I keep feeding this mindset notion to you because that's the engine that drives your life. Your mindset is the engine that drives your life. Your perception of things becomes your reality. You got to think about that for a second. See how we perceive the world or how we interpret events that take place in our lives, whether it's relationships, whether it's jobs, whatever it may be. Those things are influenced by your mindset. And so if you're stuck in that rut with your mindset being in a certain place, right? And you're unwilling to break that chain of monotony, then you're going to be stuck and you're going to be frustrated and you're not going to have that quality of life that you're seeking. So you got to make sure that you're at least willing to change your mindset from a perception being your reality standpoint. A lot of people look at, I mean, I hear crazy stuff all the time, and I say crazy. I shouldn't diminish what somebody else may think is crazy to me. I would say that. But people will get stuck in a crazy notion, from my perspective, a crazy notion, and they just stay there and they wallow in that perception. They wallow in that misery. Well, what happens when you stay there and you wallow in that? It affects your decision making. You can't make the proper decisions if your mindset is stuck in quicksand. You can't make the quality decisions that you need to make in order to have a change in your life if you're stuck in that rut and you're unwilling to change. You know, our decisions are heavily influenced by our beliefs. They're heavily influenced by our values. They're heavily influenced by our attitudes about things, right? So if you think about it, if we have a negative or limiting mindset, then what does that mean, or what will that mean for you in terms of making a change? Think about that for a second. We make decisions that reinforce the status quo or hold us back because, again, we're stuck in this quicksand. So we start to justify. I have people who always, oh, this is every day, man. I talk to so many people, whether it's business owners or whatever the case may be. And I hear this every day. Instead of people consciously looking to make a change in what they're doing, they try to justify the status quo. They try to justify why they're where they are, as opposed to going through doing the work to make a change. Well, you can't do that. Status quo is called status quo for a reason. It's going to hold us back. That holds us back because of our decision making. We make a decision just simply because it is less painful than making a change. Anthony Robbins talks about this, and he talks about, you know, how human beings seek pleasure and seek to avoid pain. And that's what we do with our mindset. You know, we try to avoid pain. So we look for the path of least resistance. Well, the path of least resistance has the worst results that you can possibly have. Trust me when I tell you that, right? You have to be resilient. You know, you have to have that resilience towards your goal, towards your life, toward making that change. You have to be adaptable. That adaptability, that flexibility is very important. So when you're willing to adjust your perspectives and you're willing to adjust your beliefs, then you can adapt new circumstances and find new solutions to problems that you might have otherwise overlooked or just otherwise dismissed because, again, you wanted to wallow in this misery. You all have heard the phrase, and I've said this before, you know, misery loves company. I like to take it a step further and always say misery hates to lose company. What that means is when people are miserable, when people are frustrated, when people are disillusioned about life, they want you to stay in that particular pity party hole with them because it makes them feel better. It makes them feel whole. The fact that you're in this misery with them. For me, the devil is a lie. I ain't doing it. I can't do it. As a matter of fact, I have been trained and conditioned to run away from toxic people, to run away from toxic thoughts and toxic ideals. I was just trained that way through all my mentors, right? And doesn't mean I'm always going to be successful. That's not what I'm saying. But what that does mean is I am resilient as it relates to where it is that I'm looking to go and how I'm going to get there. It's very important for me. And I'm willing to adapt. We're in the midst of doing this right now with One Voice Worldwide. We're in the midst of, making a major shift in the ideology of the company and the structure of it, the technology of it, all of these things that we're doing. Why? Because I'm willing as the founder of the company to adapt, to change in order for the people who are a part of the organization to thrive and to succeed. It's very important. But what a lot of people do, again, we kind of get caught in these self-limiting beliefs. You don't want to do that, guys. Many people, a lot of people, and you know these people, they harbor self-limiting beliefs that will prevent them from actually ever reaching their goals or ever reaching their potential, because they're here in these self-limiting beliefs. I can't do this, or I'm not smart enough for this, or I'm too big, or I'm too small, or I'm too black, or I'm too white, whatever it may be, right? These are self-limiting beliefs where I don't think that God put any kind of restrictions. I know any kind of restrictions on what we are capable of doing. We just have to eliminate the self-limiting beliefs and really structure our lives from a standpoint of, if this didn't work, hey, look, let's be adaptable and let's change, or let's tweak something, or let's get with some people who may have some notion that's different than what you have, right? So you have to think about that. And then when you start to put all of this pen to paper, and you start setting your goals, we've talked about that, right? You want to set motivational goals, motivating goals, goals that, we call it your why, WHY, these things that will drive you every single day to your success if those whys are big enough, if they're big enough. But again, it starts with the mindset. A growth-oriented, goal-setting type mindset, it can enhance your motivation. It'll get you fired up about getting up in the morning. Some of you just kind of dread getting up in the morning, right? You don't want to get up. You don't want to go to work. You don't want to do, if you work self-employed, you don't even want to get up to do that. Why? Because there's a growth limitation there where you're not fired up about what it is that you're doing on that particular day. So you kind of drag out of the bed. But a growth-oriented mindset, that can enhance your motivation. That can help you get fired up, and it can enable you to set ambitious goals, achievable goals, goals that what some people may think are risky, but one person's view of risk is another person's view of, I'm going for it. So, and I'm one of those people who I'm going for it. Yeah, I stub my toe all the time. Yeah, I make mistakes all the time, but that's not going to keep me from going for it. You got to be able to go for it. You got to be able to push and pursue that purpose that we always talk about. These things can spill over, we're talking about making a change, but these things can spill over even into relationships or just communication in general, because if you're not willing to change and adapt, even in your relationship, whether that's a relationship with couples or a relationship in terms of marriage, or relationship just in terms of, sister, brother, friend, or whatever, any type of relationship or communication, if you're not willing to change your mindset, if you're going to stay in that status quo, then you're not going to have that quality of life that you seek. So it's incumbent upon you to seek change. Our mindset, it influences how we interact with other people. And it perceives, their actions, our actions, their intentions, our intentions. All of these are important if we understand how we can communicate with each other based on the fact that we're at least open to change. We have to at least be open to change. By adopting a more understanding kind of an attitude, or empathetic or sympathetic type of mindset, then we can pretty much foster healthier relationships with people. Friendships, relationships, marriage ships, any other kind of ships. And we can also better communicate. And what this does is actually leads to a positive change in our social dynamics. It leads to a positive change in our family, our friends. Y'all know, you meet people, man, and sometimes you just kind of hate seeing them coming. right? And you hate seeing them coming because you know they're coming with some kind of negativity. You know they're coming with some kind of attitude. You know they're coming with something that's counterproductive to what it is that you're looking to do with your purpose. That's because they lack that level of communication, because they lack the ability to change. You know, they're I kind of make a joke about this, but a lot of times I watch these old shows like Andy Griffith and Leave It to Beaver and you know, Gunsmoke and Bananas, all these old black and white pictures, right? Um, I'm a country boy. Hey, what can I say? And I watch all of these things. And on one of the episodes of Andy Griffith, they had these two families that were feuding, kind of like the Hatfields and McCoys, but they had these two families that were feuding. And at some point, Andy Griffith asked, you know, well, why are you feuding? And one of the families like, well, my father, you know, said this is what we need to do. Well, why did your father say this? I'm paraphrasing, of course. And he said, well, his father told him this is what we needed to do. Well, why did his father say that? Your grandfather. Well, he said, because his father said it. It just went back generations and nobody knew why they were feuding. Nobody knew why they were feuding. Now, why am I saying that? Because a lot of our mindsets are stuck like that, where we just are in a place and we don't even know why we're there. We just do this every single day. Well, why do you do this every single day? Because I've always done it. Why have you always done it? Because mom and them did it. Why did mom and them do it? Well, because grandma and them did it. Man, y'all better come on with this change. Be willing and open to change. It affects everything that you do. It affects your emotional well-being. You know, your mental state affects your emotional well-being. So think about it. Look how this parallels, right? So changing, or the lack thereof, affects your mental state, and your mental state affects your emotional well-being. So what does that mean? That means if you're not willing to change and adapt to whatever the circumstance or situation may be, then you're going to go through these emotional ups and downs, or depression, or, you know, mental type issues that's going to affect you greatly, just because you don't want to take that one little initiative to change. That's powerful, man. That's deep. And you have to understand that with so much going on with mental illness, mental health, and the lack thereof, look, we can't afford to be walking around and have a lack of emotional well-being. We need to be as whole as possible. So how do you be as whole as possible? Be at least willing to change and be open. Be open to hear certain things. I know sometimes, you know, I pride myself on being open. I'll listen to anything, right? But what tends to happen for so many people when they're talking to me, even though I'm open about certain things, you have to come and approach a person from a standpoint of at least educating or getting your point across, so that they can make an intellectual decision as to whether or not they should change something, whatever that something is. In other words, you can't change me, right? The only thing you can do is put all the cards on the table and allow my intellect to say, oh, aha, I got it, and change myself. If you try to change me, then you're doing more harm than good. Because for someone like me, I go into shutdown mode, because you can't change me. But that's not to say I'm not willing to change. I am willing to change. Well, what is my prerequisite? My prerequisite is this: just give me all the information and let me make an intelligent decision about it. And I can change myself or not, right? And that goes for everybody. So you can't force change on somebody. Just give them the benefit of the information. And I've said this time and time again, because we live in a 51%, 49% society. Pretty much everybody you meet, every situation, every topic, no matter what it is, you got half the people that agree and half the people that disagree, half the people that like it, half the people that don't like it. That's just the way it is, right? So there's only so much you can do from outside sources. That means you have to internally be willing to change and study and grow and innovate and become creative. Think about it. With all of these things that's going on with AI technology and ChatGPT and the information superhighway and all of these things that are changing right around you, innovative ideas and creative solutions often come from you being able to change your mindset, you being able to be adaptable. You change that mindset and you're open to new possibilities and you're unafraid to fail. That's the other thing. This is something that's deep. A lot of people, as you guys know, they're afraid to fail, so they don't do anything. But here's something that's worse than that. There's a lot of people have a fear of success. They have a fear of success. They get to the threshold of success and then they self-sabotage. Why is that? Because they understand even with success, there comes responsibility. So they self-sabotage. How pitiful is this? When you're afraid to fail and you're afraid to succeed. That's bad. You have no out in life. You're afraid to fail, so you don't try anything, or you're afraid to succeed because you know that comes with responsibility. And with those responsibilities, you don't want to take those responsibilities, so you don't do anything. You don't do anything to fail. You don't do anything to succeed. You're stuck in that status quo. That's sad. That's sad. I've had people in my business in One Voice that would say, well, I would do this, but I don't want to have to do A, B, C, and D. That's sad. That's sad because that's not an indictment on A, B, C, and D. That's an indictment on you. That means you can't live a full-fledged life because you're afraid of success, you're afraid of failure, you're stuck in the status quo. That's where you are. And status quo is nothing. It is literally nothing. You got your foot on the gas and the brake pedal at the same time. Okay, so you have to understand that. Now, how do you get out of the status quo? How do you get from being unstuck? I think I did an episode of a podcast. I've done so many now, but I think I did an episode called How to Become Unstuck. Go back to the Deep Dive Podcast website, the deepdivepodcast.live, and just search for Unstuck. I think I did a podcast about becoming unstuck. But anyway, so how do you, get unstuck? Well, it starts with personal development. It starts and ends with personal development. You got to continuously grow. The journey of personal development and self-improvement, it relies on you having an evolution of the mind, an evolution of your mindset. Your mindset has to evolve. So as we learn, we grow, right? As we learn and we grow, then our perspectives naturally shift. See, you understand what I'm saying, right? Naturally shift. So now you're not forcing yourself from that fear of failure and that fear of success just haphazardly. What you're doing through personal development, as you're learning, as you're growing, then your perspectives naturally shift. And what that does, it opens up new avenues for more growth and transformation. That's how you're making that change, guys. That's how you're making that change. So whether you're, talking about your family situation, whether you're at the job, whether you're in a business, you have a leadership or influential type position, CEO or manager or shift manager or minister or bishop or whoever it may be, you're in leadership roles. The mindset of the leader can significantly impact whether it's your organization, your team, your job shift, whatever it is, the team, the people, or the situation that you oversee, your mindset. So if you're stuck in that status quo mindset, then as a leader, you can't grow. And if you can't grow, if you're in a leadership position, your team can't grow. Your ministry can't grow. Your managerial, your team, if you manage a team of people at a job, they can't grow because you won't grow. You're stuck in the status quo. So a leader with a growth-oriented mindset, though, they can inspire people, right? They can motivate people. They can embrace people. They can move people and embrace change, and they can pursue excellence for themselves, which in turn will give them an opportunity to pursue excellence for other people. Look, one of the things that, and I'll close with this because I think you guys get the point. One of the things that Dr. Monroe talked about, and he talked about in many sermons, but he also specifically talked to me about it. Now, I was a lot younger, and he asked a question in one of his sermons, what was the wealthiest place on earth? What's the wealthiest place on earth? And people would give all kind of answers and scenarios. And he would narrow it down and just basically say the wealthiest place on earth is the cemetery, is the graveyard. He talked about where books that should have been written were never written because people were stuck. And from my perspective, you're stuck in that status quo. So you never put pen to paper to write that book, right? Music was never written simply because you're stuck in the status quo and you refuse to pick up that staff paper and start putting treble clefs and bass clefs and notes on that music and creating that music that could in actuality affect people in a positive way. You understand that music is the art of combining sounds or tones in a suitable or systematic manner so that it is pleasing to someone's ear who is the listener. Well, so what does that mean? That means the greatest musicians who could have done something to empower other people through their musical talent, then they didn't pick up a piece of staff paper and write any kind of notes on there. Nothing, right? Paintings, artists, some of the greatest artists never picked up a paintbrush, never picked up an easel. They got stuck in the status quo and just went to, they lived that 40-40 plan. 40 years working for somebody else, 40 hours a week, retiring on half of what wasn't enough in the first place. Business owners, we talk to people every single day about getting into their own business. I'm a proponent of people getting into their own business because you can control your own destiny. You can't tell nobody nothing if you don't sign your own paycheck. They tell you what to do. They tell you when you got to go to the bathroom. They tell you when you hungry, you got to take lunch, do 12 and 1. Why? Who said I'm hungry 12 and 1? What if I'm hungry 11 o'clock? What if I'm hungry at 3 o'clock? Some people are like, no, if you're going to eat, you're going to eat between 12 and 1. If you got to go to the bathroom, you take a 5-minute break here, but not now. Well, if you don't control if you don't sign your own paycheck, direct deposit your own money, then you're not in control, right? The greatest business minds ever in the cemetery, they never took the initiative to take that next step. I talk to people every single day and I tell them the same thing over and over. I have said the same thing over and over to potential business people for years, and they're still stuck in the status quo. Hadn't moved. 10 years later, they're still in the same place. 20 years later, they're still in the same place. Guess what's going to happen? They're going to die still in the same place. That's sad. That's what the status quo is. Most of the best ideas reside in the cemetery because people never took the initiative to say, you know what, I see this. I'm going to go for it. Well, what do you need to do? Well, you don't worry about what you need to do. Just start doing it, because if you can, if you pray about it, if you can see it, if you can visualize it, God has already given you the provision to make that happen. So if you got an idea, act upon it. Don't just continue to put it off year after year. Tomorrow is not promised to anybody, and we never know when our time is coming. So why we put it off? The best ideas ever in the cemetery, the best plans ever. People who had great ideas and great plans never acted upon it. It's in the cemetery. Some of the biggest dreams, people never act upon it. They're in the cemetery. So when Dr. Miles Monroe talked about the wealthiest place on earth are the cemeteries, he's absolutely right. And that is an abomination because people won't take the initiative to get out of the status quo, to make that change that I'm talking about. You're not just here as a passing fantasy. You are still here. If you're alive, you are still here because there's still something that's yet to be done. There's still something that you're supposed to do. That's why you're still here. That's what I believe. That's what I believe. You're still here because the work is undone. Until you discover your personal reason for living, you will never be fulfilled. Let me say that again. Until you discover your personal reason for living, why are you here? Until you discover that, you will never be fulfilled. That's sad. That's sad. So how, again, do you discover your personal reason for being here? Well, if you haven't discovered it yet and you're over 18 years old, that means something needs to change. That means something needs to change. in order for you to discover their personal reason for living so that you can be fulfilled. That's what I'm talking about, guys. So understanding all the things that we talked about, I'm not bashing jobs or anything like that, but if you want to change and do something better, then you need to be in control. You need to be your own employer, because what happens is employers have employees, right? And if you're an employee, while you're at work, as we say, teed off, your employers are somewhere teeing off on a golf course or something, or on a yacht, or having fun, or traveling, and you're working and frustrated, busted and disgusted because of all of the things that you're having to deal with. Nothing can bury you faster than a job that you're trapped in. Not a job that you love, but a job that you're trapped in. Nothing can bury you faster. I want you to write that down. Nothing can bury you faster than a job that you're trapped in. Again, I'm not talking about people who love your job, or you feel emboldened or empowered by your job. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to people that you feel trapped in your job. That's the quickest way to be buried. That's the quickest way to join all of these other greats in the cemetery. We just have to make some decisions, guys. And those decisions are, are we willing to change? And if we are, when are we going to start to do it? Right? Don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to succeed. Let's just go out and do it. Let God be your guide. I had to do that a couple of years ago. I just kind of threw up my hands with everything because, I'm like, everything I'm trying, it just seemed like it wasn't working. I'm like, I'm trying this, I'm trying that, I'm trying this, I'm trying that. And I just say, you know what, God, just lead me. Just lead me. And wherever you lead me, whether I understand it or not, that's where I'm going, because I realized I didn't have the ability to make the change that I needed. I thought I needed to make. I needed to be led. And as soon as I did that, things started to change. Things started to change. Things that I didn't understand, I started to get clarity on it because there was movement there. There was change that took place, right? So I challenge each and every one of you as I close out. I challenge each and every one of you to make a change with your life that's going to empower you to move forward. That's going to empower you to build and create opportunities for your family, to create an opportunity for generations yet unborn. But you got to be able to make a change. All right. So thank you for joining me on this episode of the Deep Dive Podcast. I had fun sharing this with you guys. So hopefully you got some mileage out of it. Hopefully you took some notes. Pass this podcast on to some other people. This stuff is important, guys. We're not just saying this just to have a podcast. We're looking to empower people to prosper. Right. So like this podcast, download it, share it with someone else that may need to understand the power of why they need to change. And go back to the website, the deepdivepodcast.live, Live, and listen to some of the other episodes. Pick some episodes that are relevant to who you are or where you are in your journey, right? I mentioned earlier about becoming unstuck. If you feel that you're stuck, there's a podcast somewhere in one of those seasons that talks about becoming unstuck. Go back and listen to it. Or if you know somebody who's challenged with certain aspects of life, send the podcast to them, right? It's for them. It's for all of you. It's for all of us. So thank you guys for joining me on this episode of the Deep Dive Podcast. I appreciate it. I love you all. Looking forward to next Thursday night. Until then, God bless each and every one of you, and I'll see you on the beaches of the world.